Welcome back to the final recording on using SPSS syntax to support transparency in data manipulation techniques. This is the fourth recording covering these points that you see here in front of you. And what this final recording will actually look at will be the syntax that we could have to, if we wanted to remove variables, the syntax we might use if we want to just reorder our data set, and then the syntax that we would use if we want to actually just save the data set. So where we are at the moment in our SPSS file is what we have is we can see here for question 1, 2, 3, and 4, we have it represented twice. Okay, so we 1, 2, 3, 4, we have it recoded in the kind of the format that we want, and then we have the original 4 as well. So we don't need both sets, okay, because we're happy with the new format, so we don't need everything. So we're just going to take the original 4. Now I know when I'm going to have to type up the syntax, like basically what we could do is we could just delete these, okay, but we want the syntax for actually doing this. So I know when we type up the syntax that I need to state the names of the measurements that I want to remove. So I'm just going to highlight the 4 of them there, and I'm going to press Control-C for copying them. And that's only just because I know what the syntax lies ahead, okay? So I'm going to come here to this, our syntax, and in this case here, so I'm going to look at just putting in a comment. The comment will be if we wanted to remove unwanted, or we'll say in this case, unwanted or duplicate variables. Okay, so in this, so we want to basically delete. So if we start typing in delete, you'll see that then, so you can see, look, it stayed faded. The reason it stayed faded is because I didn't close off the comment. So I'll close off the comment. Then if I come down here, if I start typing in delete, you can see then that you're prompted for the function delete variables. And this then is where you just press space and you state what variables you want to delete. So this is why I copied the 4 of them. So I copied those 4 measurements that we had. And then I'm going to just highlight that again. So this is where we've just generated it. We haven't actually run it. So we're going to run this. So I was just going to press, look, I'll press this. Normally I just press Control-R, but I'll press the run selection button this time. If I press that, you can see the output window is updated. And if you come back to the SPSS file, then you can actually see that the 4 measurements are gone. Okay, look, it's the same as deleting them, except we actually have just recorded that step. Okay. The other thing then that sometimes you could be interested in is just reordering your measurements. For me, the subject ID, which is our case number, I would just feel that it's kind of more proper order if we had that first. Now we could just kind of drag and drop. You can see here I've highlighted it. I could drag it up and drop it, and that will reposition it. But again, I just think it's always just useful having the track record for doing that. So if we go up to data, in this case, we can go down to sort variables. Now you can see at some points I'm using kind of SPSS and I suppose the various tools in SPSS to generate the syntax, and then sometimes I don't. And mainly the reasons I don't is because there is no paste option for those. Like you can see when we updated the levels of measurement or when we updated the labels, there was no kind of paste option for that. So that's why we actually had to type in the syntax. And that was the same for when we wanted to delete the variables. Now, when it comes to sorting the variables, there is actually a bit of a paste. There is a paste option for that. So that's why I'm just highlighting going using that one. So I'm going to sort variables. Numerous ways we can sort it. I'm going to sort it based on the name, because case number in alphabetical order would go first. So I'm going to just select paste in this case. Same old story, it goes for a syntax. You can see here we have it now in the syntax. So I'm just going to put in an asterisk here, and this is where I'm just going to be ordering variables by name. Like that. I'll close that off. And this is where we have it, okay? So you can see sometimes when you generate the syntax, it will come up with state what the data set is. See, we haven't actually saved the data set, and I'm purposely just leaving it to the very end, only because I just want to show you the syntax first. But it might be something that you want to be updating as you're going along. But basically, the fact that we haven't saved it, this is where SPSS sometimes, when you press the syntax, it generates this. Like you can see, it didn't do it for the one up here because we actually typed the syntax. So this line, if it appeared for you, it's not needed. Sometimes it'll appear, sometimes it won't, okay? So we actually don't need that. If you leave it there, it will have no impact anyway, okay? But I suppose I'm just trying to keep the syntax as succinct as possible. So this is where we have a sort variables. If I highlight that and press Control-R, if we press Control-R, go back to the data set, you can now see case numbers at the very top. Okay, so just a simple reordering. The last step then is if you want to save the data set, and obviously we could have been doing this the whole time if we wanted to. We can do save as, like we do with any normal document. Now there is a reason I wanted to leave it to the very end, and you'll see why now in a couple of minutes. Okay, but what we'll do now in this case is we will save it. So we'll save this document. So we'll press save. It goes to where you want to save it. So we're going to save it here in this folder that I have called SPSS syntax. I'm going to save it as coded data. Okay, now instead of pressing save now, because I want the syntax to it, I'm going to press paste. So we come to our syntax here, and you can see, so you just missed it because that's only because it's just gone down further down here in the screen. And I just put in the comment again, save new data set, we'll say, press the full stop. And then you can see here's your code. So I'm just going to highlight that, press Control R. And if I press Control R, you can come back to the data set, and then you can see, look, there it is. There's our coded data. Okay. And when we did the first recording, what I would have said is we'd come back to this Excel file that we had at the start. So in the Excel file, there was two spreadsheets. One was the raw data, which is mainly what we were focusing on. And what I would have just mentioned in the first recording is that if I was doing an introductory course in SPSS, I would often leave the syntax. I would mention it, but I wouldn't actually dwell on it too long. And I would look at coding the data in Excel, and I just would have highlighted that. And if you're just, I suppose, if you're interested in what comments I made, you can go back to that first recording. But I would have said at that we'll come back to this coded one. Now, we never used this in SPSS, but I would have said that we'll show that when we finish off with doing everything in SPSS, we'll actually end up with the same result. And that's actually what we have here. If I just minimize this, and we can just maybe look at the first person here, who was coded 243999. 243999. Now we just have a case number ID, that's all that's additional here. And if you look at the second person, you'll see it's the same. If you press this 1A button up here, which toggles between values and labels, you can just see the different categories that we actually have. Okay. Now the beauty of what we have here is we have a track record of every step that we've actually made. Now you could say, look, that there's a bit of a track record here, and there is. But the thing is, I suppose, if you're going to be doing all your descriptive statistics in SPSS and your statistical inference at a later stage in SPSS, it's just good practice that you're actually doing your data manipulation also in SPSS. So that's the bonus of doing this, okay, along with one other reason, okay. So what we have is I wanted to show you one other thing, and then we'll finish up the recording. I'm just going to close this down, this coded data set, okay. I'm going to close that. Do I want to proceed? I do. Do I want to save the syntax? I do want to save the syntax. I never saved it there after I did the last few updates, so I do want to save that. Do I want to save the output? There's nothing really interesting in the output there. The syntax is mainly, I have all the syntax recorded. There was a couple of frequency tables. I don't necessarily need those frequency tables. So you might find that when you generate your output or get an output file at a later stage with your own data, you might want to save it. Here, there's nothing majorly of interest that we need to save. So I'm just actually going to say no to that, okay? So that's fine. If I go back to the folder where we saved everything, so these are all the various files that we actually have for, I suppose, these 4 recordings. And again, if you subscribe to this channel, you'll get access to these files, and there'll be numerous other learning resources up there as well that might be of interest. Now, what I just want to show you here, you can see, look, here's our coded data, which is basically our end result. I'm actually going to delete it. Okay, now, it's not that I'm going off recommending that you go delete your data set, not at all. I just wanted to show you, look, how the syntax really is the thing that saves us here. So I'm going to press delete. It's gone. Okay. Now what I'm going to do, though, I don't want to delete the syntax, obviously. I want to have that definitely. So I'm just going to open up that. Now this is where SPSS is being opened up fresh. So obviously, I assume you're going to be familiar with that. SPSS can sometimes take a couple of seconds to open up. So you can see here we have it. Here's the SPSS. So here's our syntax that we would have spent the 4 recordings going over. The SPSS file is blank. There's nothing there. Okay, so because we've deleted it. Okay, so if I go to the syntax file then, so what I'm going to just do here is I'm going to just highlight all of it. So this is all the syntax that we've been working on. I'm going to run it by pressing Control R. If I run it by pressing Control R, the output file ends up being generating all the various things that we've worked through. The SPSS file is generated, and here we have our end result. Here is the end result that we spent 4 recordings getting to, where we actually have the various views, I suppose the tidied up data with question 1, 2, 3, 4, and the case numbers. Okay, and basically that's down to actually having the syntax. The syntax is basically the record of everything that we've actually done. So it's not that I'm recommending going off deleting data sets, but I do find it's a nice useful step at the end of your syntax that you actually have a line of code to actually save your data set, because if for some reason you've lost your data set, well, obviously you have the syntax then to save you. Now the main thing then is you obviously don't lose your syntax, but obviously that's something you just have to be careful with, okay? And look at that, we're pretty much nearing the end of this recording. Hopefully you found the recordings of use. If you had, I'd appreciate that you'd like or share the recordings on YouTube. Tell your friends, family, colleagues about them. If you wanted to get in contact, here's some contact details. And as always, like any of these YouTube videos, that if you subscribe to the channel, you'll get access to loads of different learning resources that I'll be putting up over the coming weeks and months. But for the moment, I hope you found that the recordings were of use and of help, and all the best, and until next time.